let's kick things off with the first club alphabetically, which is, of course, Birmingham City. Justin, who have you gone for their key player this coming season?
I've gone with Tommy Doyle, the new loan signing. I think with Doyle, there's a player there who we know is capable, especially at championship level. I mean, at 23, he's at an age where he needs to kick on as well. And he's perhaps not done that yet in the last couple of years. So a move like this to Birmingham should give him that opportunity. Only started 3 games last season. Only started at the 11 the season before. So he's got a point to prove as well. He's a very tidy passer and someone who I think will be the link in getting that ball into dangerous areas for teammates to exploit. Set pieces are as good as well. I think he's the player who isn't going to score 10 and assist 10, but he's the guy who plays the pass before the final ball, if that makes sense. He's going to get you dangerous players into dangerous areas, which ultimately is where you want them to be.
Yeah, the dictator. That's what he's going to be. And, I've already spoken about how much I rate the Tommy Doyle signing because I picked it as my signing of the summer so far. Whether it will be my actual signing of the summer when the transfer window is, fully gone out, that's another thing. But I rate this signing very, very big because I think it genuinely transforms Birmingham from plucky newcomer to the division, Justin, to a genuine team who are on the lookout for back-to-back promotions, in my eyes. Is that something that's been on your mind as we get closer towards the actual season starting?
I think in terms of the type of player he is and also the resource they're committing to him, if you like, obviously there's an option to buy, or an obligation to buy at the end of the season, which will be for a fair whack.
If they go up, I think that is.
If they get promoted. But I think, in terms of the type of player he is, Chris Davis has come from that school of coaching where retaining possession is important. I don't think there are too many players in that Birmingham squad currently who have that quality that Tommy Doyle has. Now, I do think it's worth the caveat of saying he's not played a lot of football or as much football as others in the previous 2 years, but don't let that put you off him because, at 23, he's still at an age where there's still, a very high ceiling for him.
He's still been playing a lot of football, though, and it's been at the top level. And for him to be, as I said before, the only reason he's not been playing for Wolves is because there are simply better players ahead of him. It's not like he's not good enough for the Premier League. So, that's how serious a signing that is for Birmingham. But let's go to my key player for the Blue Nosers this coming season. I've gone with Christophe Clara. And look, Birmingham City are coming up to the Championship with one of the strongest squads we've ever seen. That's even before all the signings they've already made, like Tommy Doyle. One of the big reasons for them having a seriously strong squad, though, is Christophe Clara. The thing is, with Birmingham, yes, they spent a lot of money, but the difference between them and, let's say, another team who had a lot of money in League One last season, they've got a mix of a lot of money and top quality scouting, and Clara is the best example of that. In my eyes, this guy has been a top-end Championship centre-back who was somehow signed by a League One team. He played nearly every game for Darmstadt in the Bundesliga the season before, and this coming season he will be absolutely massive, literally and figuratively, to Birmingham's ambitions. Because he was Birmingham City's player of the season, not a bad thing to have on your CV considering it was a record-breaking side, and the guy is an absolute monster who will head bricks, but also he's good on the ball, and I'm really looking forward to seeing his partnership with new signing Phil Newman because it's going to be absolutely pivotal to Birmingham's season and the potential for yet another promotion, Justin.
He looks like a defender, doesn't he?
He looks like a thug.
This is going back some years, and only Coventry and Derby fans might be able to sort of remember him, but he looks a lot like Mo Konjic. A very sort of veteran defender, but he looks like he heads the ball and also takes players out as well because he knows he's been battered by years of, I imagine, good defending. Let's just say that. But I think when you've got players like him in your team, yes, that drive for promotion is there because you don't sign players of that quality for no reason. I think there's an element of, with Clara, that League One probably played to his strengths a little bit more. Whereas the Championship has probably evolved a bit over the past few years and his mobility is going to be tested. He's a big lad, we know this, and sometimes there were occasions where decisions could have been rash last season when stepping out of defence to make challenges. But I think it will be that learning curve. But I think if Birmingham have a chance to get promoted this season, a strong spine is going to be very, very important. Now, you've got Clare at centre half, you've got Tommy Doyle at centre mid, you've got Beadle who's coming on loan as a goalkeeper, and you've got Furuhashi up front. That is the good starting point for a very strong foundation. And obviously, Clare was there last season. He knows what it's like, that Birmingham City blueprint. So yeah, it's going to be a huge, huge asset, as you said, both literally and figuratively for Birmingham next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the next club. It's Blackburn Rovers. I've gone as my key player, Sean McLaughlin, who's just joined Blackburn from Hull City, a move which I found fairly surprising, actually, especially considering they've got him for just £500,000. Because I rate McLaughlin. He seemed to split opinion at Hull, but I think he was quite underrated. Underlying data-wise, he's very solid. And so I can see this being a classic case of player A being underappreciated by a fan base and then doing well at another club because he can play at centre-back or left-back. Is he going to be the type of player who wins you promotion? Definitely not. But if you're looking for someone who does the basics, does it well, and will be very handy as the season goes on, McLaughlin's very good value for just £500,000, Justin.
A very consistent defender at Hull. A very consistent defender, and you've put him alongside a consistent defender in Dom Hyam as well, which again is going to bode well. Blackburn, the bedrock of their success last season was a consistent back line. Danny Bart probably outperformed expectations last season alongside Dom Hyam, but I think having a settled couple of centre backs is going to be important. So McLaughlin and Hyam could be massive. I think Scott Wharton's injury record has probably stopped him from progressing as much as we would have liked. So I certainly think McLaughlin is a step up and an upgrade currently. And again, at £500,000, you can't really turn your nose up at it. He's not a blood and thunder type defender, but that's going to be micro-analysing him, but he gets into good blocking positions. Aerially, he's decent as well. But I think the main takeaway from it is he's going to be that sort of player who, in a consistent back line, is going to be important.
Yeah, absolutely. He's kind of He's the kind of player who a lot of managers will appreciate, because if you ask him to do something, he will do it, and he'll do a very solid job of it. As I say, he's not going to get Blackburn fighting for promotion this coming season, but £500,000 for the amount of games and experience that he has under his belt, you can't really go wrong with that. Justin, who's your key player for Rovers this coming season?
Bit of a tap-in. I've gone with Todd Cantwell. I think with the loss of Tyrese Dolan and somewhat the resurgence of Cantwell last season, I think Cantwell's going to be in a position, again, to be that source of creativity for Rovers. He averaged the most key passes in the team last season. That's essentially creating chances. And also accumulated the most assists with 7. Not much, but he's coming off the back of a few wilderness years. 27 as well. Still looks like he's 19, which is great for him. Yeah. But he's 27. So I think he's going to be a player who, when the spotlight is on him and the expectation is on him, I think he can step up. Sort of like Tom Lawrence for Derby a few years back. More extreme example would be Adel Taarabt or QPR. Your game changer types. I think Blackburn are going to need him because, again, resource, we know investment in replacing players isn't there, or massive investment to replace these quality players. So having Todd Cantwell already on the books, I think is going to be very important. So yeah, Todd Cantwell for me is the player I'm picking for Rovers.
Yeah, he gives them a bit of an X factor, doesn't he? Because Blackburn, that's something they are lacking and have lacked for some years now, I think it's fair to say. Adel Taarabt's a very interesting comparison. But yeah, he does give Blackburn an X factor. So yeah, he's going to be massively important for them. And he looks a bit like a One Direction member, Justin.
Yeah, I see it. That's what I mean. He looks like he's got flawless skin, which I'm very jealous of. And his hairline's fantastic. So fair play to him, but the gold locks in that blue and white is a fantastic asset again for Rovers.
Yeah, looks great. Looks absolutely great. Well done to you, Todd. Let's go to Bristol City, who are our next club. Justin, kick us off. Who's your key player for the Robins?
I've selected Jason Knight. This is more to do with Gerhard Struber. He's going to want to play high. He's going to want to play aggressive. We know what to expect from him to a certain extent. He's going to want to pin our opposition back. And I don't think there's a player in the Championship with the legs that Jason Knight possesses. Yes, I know some listeners will be like, well, what about this player? Jason Knight can sprint all for 90 minutes. He's that type of player. But I think he's actually more intelligent on the ball than many will give him credit for as well. Mainly because he's smart with his choice of pass. I know numbers-wise he doesn't stack up against other players' goals and assists. But aerially, he's dominant despite his size, and his runs off the ball are very intelligent. Again, this is a trait in football that is vastly overlooked. You have players who will make runs just to create space for others, and Knight is and always will be one of those players that will get you Anis Mehmetis and Scott Twines on the board, the creative outlets, because he's going to create space for them. So, as I say, that ability to press, that ability to be intelligent in that midfield, I think is going to be massive for Bristol City next season.
Yeah, I'd love to see it if it was possible for us to look at the amount of distance covered in the Championship. As far as I'm aware, I don't think anyone keeps a record of that, but Jason Knight simply has to be top because the amount of miles he covers is just insane, really. And I've always said he's one of the most underrated players in the division for me. I think he's someone as well who has just got progressively better and better ever since moving to Ashton Gate as well. So if that continues, then he's going to be absolutely huge for Bristol City. I also think if Burnley was still, in the Premier League with Sean Dyche, then perfect, he would have been absolutely nailed on to go there at some point. But maybe he's a bit unfashionable for modern Premier League sides just now. I don't know if you've got a take on that.
No, it's so true. I think a Sean Dyche team who don't have as much resources as other teams are going to sign Jason Knight for £10 million.
Yeah.
We know that. It's a Josh Brownhill type player, isn't he? But I like Brownhill. I think Jason Knight's got the ability to extend his game even further. So there's one thing I will say to that. But yeah, this has got Sean. He's a player that's got Sean Dyche written all over him.
Yeah. Wherever Sean Dyche crops up next, I'm sure he'll be having a good old sniff of Jason Knight. Let's go to Emil Rees. He's my key player for Bristol City. Now, of course, Justin and I had our disagreements earlier in the summer about what kind of level Emil Rees is at. I don't think he's a bad player, don't get me wrong. I just wouldn't personally have him at a club chasing the playoffs like Bristol City are. But the reason he's key is because a lot of the emphasis on scoring goals is going to be resting on his shoulders this coming season. Bristol City's top two scorers last season were Anis Mehmeti with 12. Is he going to produce that number again? Unsure. And Narky Wells with 10 was the other top scorer who's not at the club anymore. The next highest scorer after those two had 5. So Bristol City's other striking options, they're not great. Now, Rees, he's a good finisher, but my big issue with him is he doesn't offer a massive amount outside the box. That's where he's really got to improve for me and is where I've got serious doubts over him as a striker for a top 6 team. If he can be a lot better there and scored a load of goals in the process, Bristol City probably will finish in or around the playoffs this coming season. Hence why I've got him down as their key man. And I'm interested to see how he does, no matter how much I rate him, Justin.
I like Emil Rees. I do rate him. I do agree to some extent that, he can offer a lot more, especially outside the box. But, a player of his age, is he going to really do that? Probably not. So if you've got a striker who's getting into the box, who just wants to score goals, then fair enough. I think he's a player who is probably going to make 30 appearances, start 30 games and then make 12 off the bench and score you sort of 10 to 13, 14 goals, which is a very good return from a player you're signing on a free transfer, no less. I think he's got a point to prove because I do think he is capable of stepping up for a team pushing for the playoffs because, as I alluded to a few weeks ago, Sunderland are interested in him, Middlesbrough have been in him in the past, and I think when you've got interest like that coming in and potential big money bids coming in, there's clearly a player they rate. So if there's a player that I want to prove you wrong this season, I want it to be Emil Rees.
The next team who we're picking a key player for is, of course, Charlton Athletic. I've gone with Rob Apter. Now, some of our listeners probably don't know who Rob Apter is. He's joined Charlton from Blackpool for around £2.5 million and looks to be a very exciting move. Blackpool fans are gutted to be losing him, and it's because he looks a real talent for me. Only Kwame Poku was ahead of him in terms of right wingers in League One last season, and that's because the standard in that Kwame Poku set was incredibly high last season. But Apter's only just turned 22. He scored 8 goals, was one of the top chance creators in League One, and was also one of the best at taking on players. It's rare for a player of his age to be such an all-round attacker, but this is what we've got here with him. Now, there'll probably be questions over whether he can make that step up to the Championship, which is fair. What I would say to that is he's not had any problems at all making the step up previously. Just 3 years ago, he was playing for Bamber Bridge in the 7th tier of English football. Since then, he's gone on to play in the National League North, then the National League, then League Two, and then League One last season. It's almost like a bit of a video game with him. Start from the bottom, work your way up. That is what he is doing. But as I say, he was one of the standout attackers in League One last season. Considering his age and the progress he's already made in his career, they could very easily make a big profit on him in years to come. So this is signing of the season potential for me, because I think it'll be huge for Charlton going forwards.
Certainly in terms of impacts for an individual club, I think there's that potential for him to be signing the season. Definitely sort of like Josh Murphy last season for Portsmouth. At 22, loads of room for growth. I think that's a really good investment from Charlton, really smart investment. You know, you mentioned he scored 8, he assisted 4 last season, so 12 goal contributions, but it was 9 goal contributions in the final 22 games of the season, so it was a very good second half of last season as opposed to the first. Sonny Carey, who Charlton have also signed from Blackpool on a free transfer, had a similar vein of form, so it's clearly something going on with Blackpool as opposed to those two players. But when you talk about their contributions and then obviously Rob Apter as well, you can't understate it. And I think it is a very smart investment coming off the right-hand side. It'd be interesting to see how he does adapt to the Championship. But as you noted, his trajectory has been going this way. And I think when you've got a manager like Nathan Jones, I don't think any player has a ceiling just yet.
Yeah. But as far as why he's a key player, right wing was definitely an area Charlton needed to strengthen following the departure of Thierry Small to Preston. And now I think they've got someone who's actually an upgrade on him. So it's a great move. And I continue to be very impressed with Charlton's business this summer. And Justin, you've got a new signing as your key player as well.
Yeah, I've gone with Thomas Kaminski. I was humming and hawing between him and Tyrese Campbell, but my thinking on Campbell is he's still young and he's got to adapt to the Championship. And I know we've just mentioned Rob Apter, but I wanted to go with experience, but I also wanted to go with a goalkeeper because I think teams coming up from League One into Championship need to have a very good goalkeeper. It doesn't matter.
Let me just interrupt you for a sec, Justin. There's two Tyrese Campbells, if anyone's confused about what Justin's talking about there. Carry on.
Yeah, the slightly younger one who plays for Charlton. But I've gone with Thomas Kaminski for the fact that he's a good goalkeeper. He's a very good signing at Championship level. You know, he's been around the Belgian setup, national setup very recently, which is obviously packed full of talent. But with Charlton signing him, and the reason why I've gone with the goalkeeper is because I think they're going to have a lot of games that are going to be tight. I don't think they're going to concede a lot of chances because Nathan Jones teams typically do not concede a lot of chances. His Charlton side were ranked one of the lowest teams last season in terms of shots on goal, and you just have to look at his Luton side and how incredibly efficient they were at keeping clean sheets and keeping opposition at bay. I think that'll be the case, but that's not to say they're not going to concede a couple of chances where they're going to need a very good goalkeeper to keep those chances out. And I think Thomas Kaminski has a potential, like last season with Luton, to win them 8 or 9 points next season, which will be pivotal.
Yeah, absolutely. I was bigging that up when we were talking about signings of the summer so far. I'm not going to disagree with anything you say there, Justin. We'll go to the next club because it's Coventry City, and you were just talking about a goalkeeper. I've gone for a goalkeeper as their key player. I've gone with Carl Rushworth, who at the time of recording hasn't officially signed yet, but it looks to be fairly imminent. And the reason why he's going to be so important to Coventry is because goalkeeper was very much a problem position for them towards the end of last season. Their number one, Oliver Doven, did his ACL in April, so he's going to be out until probably the new year. In came their number 2, Brad Collins, who I think it's fair to say had a bit of a shocker. He was at fault for several goals during the 7 games he was called upon towards the end of the season, and then that meant they had to draft in their third choice, Ben Wilson, for the playoffs. Ultimately, goalkeeper was clearly high up on their priority list for this summer. Now, Carl Rushworth is a very good one to get in. It says a lot that Coventry reportedly bid $5.5 million for him, and that was rejected. So they've had to settle for a straight loan deal, but that shows Brighton, his parent club, still clearly think he could play for them in the long term. He's coming off the back of a pretty frustrating season where he was on loan at Hull, could not stay fit, and eventually got recalled, so barely played much at all last season. But the season before, he played every minute for Swansea and was superb. He's still only 24 now as well. I think he's got a big future ahead of him and could turn out to be a top-class keeper, particularly with Coventry this coming season, Justin.
Yeah, Brian seems to be stockpiling very good goalkeepers. Obviously got James Beadle, who's out on loan in the Championship. Carl Rushworth is another one. Obviously, Rushworth will be Well, yeah, very familiar to fans in the Championship. His loan spell at Lincoln 2 years ago was brilliant. He was good at Swansea in the 23-24 season. Obviously mentioned not being able to stay fit a whole last season, but the fact remains he is good enough for this level. And Brighton wanting to keep hold of him is a very important thing to note, really. Just in terms of what how Coventry can play, I think we saw Dovin be very important, but also playing out from the back is going to be very important for Coventry as well. And Carl Rushworth, we know, given his exploits with Swansea in previous years, he's capable of it. And obviously, going through the school of coaching at Brighton, he's going to be a goalkeeper who needs to be good with his feet. And again, just in terms of his overall ability, shot stopping, but also playing out from the back, two important factors there.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, who's your key man for Coventry City?
I've gone with Matt Grimes. I think there's a lot of players you could have picked with Coventry, like Haji Wright, Jack Redoni, Ephraim Mason-Clark. There are quite a few candidates, but the reason why I've gone with Matt Grimes is for several reasons. I mean, he's notoriously been key for Swansea and how they play. His calmness in possession is one thing, but he's very good at shielding a back four with some very underrated ball recovery numbers in recent years. It's not his main game, but I do feel his reading of things in midfield make him a player who can do his job well and do it well into his 30s. I feel like he could do the same thing when he's 35, but like Barry Bannon in a sense, or Andre Pirlo if you want something a little bit more sophisticated.
Some of your comparisons in this episode
they're not
are
comparisons.
outrageous.
It's bringing context to a role in which a player plays. I'm not comparing Matt Grimes to Andre Pirlo or Barry Bannon to Andre Pirlo. It's more so what they do in possession for a team. But I think if Frank Lampard is going to be successful next season, basing what this team does in possession around Grimes, I think is going to be vital. We saw a lot of the times there's an over-reliance on set pieces and wide areas too much. And I think when you've got Matt Grimes, you need to utilise his passing qualities. And if you do that, they're going to be sustained periods of possession in opposition territory. I think that's going to happen, which should surmount to more chances being created. So it's not a criticism of Lampard. You need to play through him if you're going to have success in a team, as we've seen with Swansea in recent years.
Yeah. Well, Matt Grimes is Mr. Consistent, isn't he? I think I'm right in saying that since 2018, he's only missed 5 league games in the Championship. Since 2018, Justin. That is astonishing, isn't it? So, yeah, Matt Grimes he's ever present, isn't he, for whoever he's playing for, and Coventry fans, I think, got a glimpse of how important he's going to be for them going forwards last season. And I think that's definitely going to be the case going forwards. Let's go to Derby County. Justin, who is your key player for the Rams?
I've gone with Corey Blackett-Taylor. A forgotten man because of his injury record. I think firstly, he's having a very good pre-season. But secondly, I think Derby, I've not seen what Blackett-Taylor is capable of yet, owing to those injuries. But I do think injuries are down to previous regimes overworking individuals. We'll leave that there. We want to make this a happy podcast, not a miserable one, Paul Warren. But he's a player who likes to run with the ball. We know this. He's a player who lacks fear when it comes to making things happen. When he's confident, he really can deliver. And I think he can be the answer to a lot of Derby's winger problems. And of course, he does need to provide. He needs to step up. We've lacked that visual in recent years. I could have picked Carlton Morris, but he needs supply. And one thing I do like about Blackett-Taylor is his consistency in finding players in the box with his crossing. Again, got to be confident, but I've seen enough of him to be invested in what he can bring to this team next season.
Yeah, Derby didn't play with wingers towards the end of the season under John Eustace, and the main reason for that was because Derby didn't have any wingers who were playing very well. And I had spent most of the summer thinking it would be the same again next season, but then pre-season has made me doubt that because it looks very much like John Eustace wants to go back to playing with wingers like he was at Blackburn, and that does worry me a bit because Derby haven't signed any wingers. So if that is the case, Blackett-Taylor might be playing a fair bit more than many expected this coming year. So, I mean, to be fair to him, he made a handful of sub-appearances in the dying embers of the Paul Warren days, and he was usually the most encouraging in what was usually a pretty shocking performance as a team. But if Derby are going to be playing with wingers, please sign some. That's what I would say, Justin.
Well, they do need depth, absolutely. And obviously, Corey Blackett-Taylor's injury record over the past 18 months since he's been at Derby does make you concerned. But I do genuinely believe that there was an overworking of individuals. Derby's injury record over the past 18 months under Paul Warren has been atrocious. And I think that hopefully will start to change. And if Blackett-Taylor is fit, there's a ready-made winger there who I think is capable of being a very consistent player in the Championship.
For my key player at Derby, I'm going to go with Owen Beck, another one who hasn't officially signed at the time of recording, but is expected to move this week, according to reports. But yeah, Owen Beck, another one who worked with John Eustace at Blackburn last season. Derby really seemed to be raiding his old side, but Beck was fantastic at left back for Blackburn, became a bit of a fan favourite actually because he's got loads of energy, loves getting forwards, and he's very solid defensively considering he's still only 22. Considering Derby's current left back, Callum Elder, has had his injury problems. They needed to get another one in, so I think this is a very shrewd signing. And the reason I particularly wanted to highlight him as a key player is because of what you were saying, Justin. Creativity is the big thing Derby have to address before the window closes, and he's going to help with that. People are going to point out that he didn't get an assist last season with Blackburn, but the season before with Dundee, he was one of the best chance creators in the Scottish Premiership. So he's going to be huge in numerous ways, I think, Justin, going forwards.
Yeah, he was, of course, bit on the back as well by Middleton as Majic last season.
Yeah, we did have a message from Spudwave on the second tier Discord saying that's a tasty signing, or at least that's what Middleton as Majic said.
It could be. Well, as Majic didn't spit him out after, did he? So he clearly liked him. But yeah, only 23 appearances last season, owing to injury. But he is a player. I think, with certain individuals, we can focus too much on end product, especially from, adventurous left backs. But it's their ball carrying ability that can also be a huge asset. Their ability to get the ball, pick it up, run it 30 yards into opposition area and get your team into a better position than it was 10 seconds ago. Owen Beck has that quality, and they've probably not had that quality in a left back since, I don't know, checks notes, Craig Forsyth 10 years ago. Just a really good ball-carrying defender who, John Eustace isn't going to want a player who's not defensively capable. I think that's worth bearing in mind. So I think Owen Beck coming in, I think, would be a very, very tidy signing for Derby.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, we'll have a quick break. After that, we'll go through the team's Hull to Norwich as we pick out a key player for every side in the Champo. Welcome back to the second tier podcast. We're picking a key player for every team in the Championship, but a just quick diversion to the latest video on the second tier YouTube channel, because I've been ranking every Championship manager on how likely they are to be sacked this coming season. And we've been talking about managers a lot here on the podcast this past week. Just now, I don't want to reopen any healing wounds, but was there anyone who you think, in fact, who do you think is the manager who is most likely to get sacked in your eyes this coming season?
You've only got to look at Watford and just say you're only 3 bad games from being sacked as a Watford manager. So Paolo Pezzolano's the first name that springs to my mind. Liam Manning's an interesting shout, because let's say you get to October and they sit 12th and there's not been this resurgence that is maybe expected, especially justifying the spend. Is he going to be under threat? Maybe. That's an interesting, cog to throw into the old machine, if you like. I don't have any strong feelings just yet, mainly because I think Paolo Pezzolano is going to be under pressure at Watford. Sergej Jikerovic, can Hull afford to sack him? Probably not. But again, based on previous years, he's only going to last 3 months. Yeah, the regime at Hull is sack happy, if you like. So I don't have a strong feeling on a lot of managers because there's a lot of new ones coming in and there's a lot of expectation with others. But there are 3 names that I'm intrigued about.
I can tell you now, Liam Manning wasn't one of the managers I picked as most likely to get sacked this coming season, but you can find it for yourself who I've gone with there. I've also picked out the managers who I think are safe as houses this coming season as well, so you can have a look at that and get your own takes on it on the Second Tier YouTube channel. Go watch it now. Right, let's get on to the key players for the rest of the teams in this episode, Justin. We've got Hull City next. Who have you picked as a key player for them?
I've gone with Mohamed Baloumi. We were robbed last season because of that pesky ACL. I'm so good we didn't see more of Baloumi last season. And obviously it depends on him returning. I did see reports that he'll be back on grass towards the end of pre-season, so it might take him some time to get up and running for this new season. But given Hull's current constraints and also unsettled things, unsettled behind the scenes, I don't think there's a player at Hull that has a technical quality that Mohamed Baloumi has. We only saw him for 10 games last season, but he got 4 goal contributions. He was also the highest rated player on Who Scored, despite playing just 10 games. I think missing his ability last season was a huge reason why I think Hull struggled to create. And they probably had to completely rethink their approach in wide areas. I think him coming back into the team, as much of a cliche it is going to feel like a new signing this season.
Yeah. I was very, very impressed with Mohamed Baloumi in the first part of the season, even though Hull were pretty terrible last season. And so I'm excited to see him back in action. And I've gone with someone who's in a very similar vein to Baloumi, actually, Justin, because he also suffered a season-ending injury at almost the exact same time. That is Liam Miller. Yeah, Hull had some terrible luck with injuries last season, actually, because both of them suffered season-ending injuries around autumn time. And that really, really knocked him for 6, didn't it? But look, Miller's exactly the same. He was a thrilling player from what we've seen him at championship level so far. He's not back fully training just yet, but I'm led to believe he's not far away. And when he's back fit, he'll be like a new signing, which is useful for a club who are currently under a transfer embargo. But yeah, he looked very bright on the left wing for Hull before his injury. They paid a lot of money for him as well. So, they'll hopefully be seeing some return on that this coming year. Had a very good loan spell at Preston the season before last. He's a brilliant dribbler, very quick, loves cutting in on his right foot, and he can pull off the spectacular on occasion. Hull's big problem last season was scoring goals. They were the lowest scorers in the league. Baloumi on the right, Miller on the left. That will go a long way to improving it, Justin.
It would. It just goes to show the situation that Hull are currently in, that they are, especially going forward, probably relying on 2 players who are just coming off the back of ACL injuries, which wouldn't be fair to them, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on them. And hopefully they do come back and they're not rushed into things, because I think post ACL injury, a lot of players suffer a lot of hamstring injuries because of fatigue, etc., and lack of strengthening. But hopefully that's not going to be the case, because these 2 need to be fit, I think, if Hull are going to steer away from being dragged into any sort of relegation fire, as we saw last season.
Let's go to the next team in our key player selections, and it's the team who are, of course, the favourites with the bookies to win promotion this coming season, Ipswich Town. And I've gone for their key player as new signing Azor Matusiwa. Now, for those who aren't too aware, Matusiwa is a midfielder who recently signed for £8 million from Rennes. Now, as someone who has already put a fair amount of money on Ipswich to get promoted, I will admit I was getting rather concerned about their midfield. I think Ipswich are pretty stacked in almost every position, but the midfield too was one which I was getting a bit edgy with, particularly following the departure of captain and friend of the show, Sam Morsey. But those concerns I had have certainly been eased by this signing. The underlying data has Matusiwa down as one of the standout ball-winning midfielders in Ligue 1 for the past 4 seasons, firstly with Ram, and then he moved to Rennes for 14 million 18 months ago. He seemed to fall out of favour under the new manager, former Newcastle defender Habib Beye, bizarrely, towards the end of last season. So he's become available, and Ipswich have been able to get him at a cut price, and I think he's exactly what they needed, a brilliant ball winner, but also a very good passer as well. So I think this looks like an excellent move. He's 27, I believe, so it's not like he's someone who's, going to get a big resale value for Ipswich in years to come. He's someone who they've got in to try and get promotion this coming season, and I think he'll be the heartbeat of that Ipswich side.
Yeah, I can't possess to know a lot about Matusiwa, but I will agree with you. One area that really needed strengthening was central midfield. Obviously, Sam Morsey wasn't getting older. Massimo Luongo was in there as well, and there was the outgoing loan signings of Calvin Phillips, etc., from last season as well. So it was an area that needed strengthening, and I'll be honest, I'll agree a lot with what you're saying, mainly because you have Ipswich tinted glasses on most of the time.
That's a big accusation to make, but okay. But fine. We'll move on to your key player, Justin. Who have you gone with here? It's an old favourite of ours, I believe.
It absolutely is. A man who could play for England one day, quoting Ryan Dilks. Leif Davis, I think, will be
just not what I said.
think he will be vital for two reasons.
Two things in the space of 30 seconds where you've completely misled the audience to my character.
Absolutely. New listeners need to know. I think he'll be vital for two reasons. Delivery and set-piece delivery. So one reason, but two scenarios. But anyway, I don't think we will see the same Ipswich we saw last time they were in the Championship. I think opposition will approach them differently, so I think games will be a little bit tighter than what we saw. There was a lot of chaos. I didn't like it. It gave me stomachache. Didn't enjoy it. I think edging in those tight games can be done from pinpoint delivery from deeper positions, as well as set pieces. And 34 assists in 3 years tells you what Leif Davis can provide in that context.
Yeah, big fan of Leif Davis. Didn't say what you said just a second ago. It's just not true. But yeah, he's obviously going to be huge for Ipswich this coming season. Let's go to Leicester City. And we've gone with someone who I think we're both a fan of here, as well as my key players, Abdul Fataru. Now, anyone who didn't follow Leicester or the Championship too closely the season before last probably doesn't know who Abdul Fataru is, but he was excellent on loan at Leicester in their promotion season. Actually, a bit of an unsung hero, despite being a teenager for most of it, because he really grew into the season on the right wing, got 13 assists, and then he was signed permanently for around £14 million when they got to the Premier League. And he featured in all of Leicester's first 11 games in the Prem, but then did his ACL and has been out injured since last November. However, during a friendly over the weekend, he made his first appearance back in 8 months. A rare bit of good news for Leicester. And look, so far Leicester haven't signed anyone. I'm not sure if that's going to change anytime soon, but a fully fit Abdul Fataru will be like a new signing. And a lot of Leicester's hopes for the new season could rest on his shoulders and how quickly he gets back to full fitness. So yeah, absolutely, Abdul Fataru. A fully fit Abdul Fataru will be absolutely lethal, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was a difference maker in Leicester getting promoted from the Championship a couple of years ago. I know a lot of people will say, they finished top and they, over the course of the season, Leicester ran away with it in sort of the first half of the season. Then results started to slip a little bit. But Abdul Fataru, in a tight scenario, in a tight game, really was a difference maker for Leicester in the final third of the season. Scored some incredible goals and really lit things up. He's a player who just runs without fear, and you've got to love wingers who are like that. In a system under Enzo Maresca, it really, really works. It'll be interesting to see how it works under Martí Cifuentes. But on one flank, you've got Steffi Mavrididi, on the other, you've got Abdul Fataru. That's the recipe for a lot of excitement down both wings. And Abdul Fataru, as you say, 21 years old, will want to make up for lost time. Last season, obviously, only made 11 appearances in the Premier League last season. So again, not necessarily got a point to prove, but he's going to want to make up for that time he didn't get on the pitch.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about our league table predictions, which we'll be revealing in the next fortnight. Leicester are a really tricky one to nail down because obviously they're an absolute mess off the pitch, but you do look at their squad and go,
it's nice.
They've got some bloody good players. So yeah, a really, really tricky one to nail down. And another example of a very good player here, Justin, is the guy you've got as their key player for this coming season.
Oliver Skipp. Oh, £20 million he cost last season. I'm just sorry. The reason why I'm getting really excited is because I'm just imagining a double pivot of Harry Winks and Oliver Skipp. Come on, that's nice, right? Well, okay. that's not the reaction I expected. I will skirt my excitement and just tell you why I like him. I've picked Skipp because of Cifuentes, another player I've picked because of the manager that is leading them. I think being rigid will be at the forefront of Cifuentes' mind, especially in the initial stage of the season as he gets a feel of his squad. And we know at Championship level what Oliver Skipp can deliver and the role he can thrive within as well. Ball winning capabilities are well known. Played a key role for Norwich under Daniel Farke a few years back. And that was in a 4-2-3-1, which is why I'm excited about a potential double pivot of Oliver Skipp and Harry Winks. That's just the FIFA player within me talking, or the Football Manager player for more educated fellas. But Martí Cifuentes did the same with Sam Field at QPR. Did a great job in a similar role, and I think Cifuentes really values that contribution, whatever system he plays.
Yeah, I mean, for full clarity, it wasn't Oliver Skipp who I was making that weird noise to before. But yeah, we'll obviously have more of a chat about Leicester squad as a whole as we gear towards the new season. Let's go to the next club in our key player selections. It's Morgan Whittaker of Middlesbrough is who I've gone for. The Teessiders. Yeah, I think it's fair to say Morgan Whittaker's move to Middlesbrough hasn't gone to plan so far. He was signed in January for around $5 million to give them some extra firepower in their hunt for a playoff place. And he's still yet to score a competitive goal for them. He got just the one assist. In fact, Middlesbrough only won 3 of the 11 games he started for them last season. Now, Middlesbrough as a team dropped off quite considerably as the season went on, but Borough fans are yet to really see why they paid such a big amount of money for him. And Middlesbrough are another club who haven't really done much in the transfer window so far. Maybe they think the squad should be good enough to match their expectations for the season. Maybe they're still waiting for players to move on. I've seen them linked with a few players, but it doesn't look like they're going to be lumping money at this coming season. But either way, they've got plenty of players who are going to have to step up. No one has to step up more than Morgan Whittaker, but we know he can do it because he scored 19 in a struggling Plymouth side the season before last. And so this is a big season for him at Borough.
I'm a bit hesitant with Morgan Whittaker, mainly because we saw a really good year from him at Plymouth in the Championship, and we saw a mixed 6 months. And then obviously the move came about to Middlesbrough, and he just never got going. He's a very talented ball carrier, and he's very capable of scoring a very good goal from distance. I think I need to see a little bit more from him to be really convinced that he's capable of stepping up into a team who are going to be pushing for the top 6, where games are a little bit edgy and he's got less space and less time for decision making, etc. in that final third. So I'm a little bit more hesitant with Morgan Whittaker, just because I don't think he had a very good year last year. So for him to step up to Middlesbrough, I'm a bit uneasy.
No, I agree with you, Justin. I absolutely agree with you. When I say him as Middlesbrough's key player, I'm not saying I think he's their best player or he's going to win their player of the season. I think he's someone who has to step up. I absolutely agree with you there. Because we saw at Plymouth that when he's kind of the focal point of that team and everything is going through him, he can really flourish. But when you're at Middlesbrough, where the standards are a bit higher and you're having to play a bit differently, more on the front foot, it's not really worked out for him so far, has it? So yeah, he's got a lot of doubters to prove wrong, but he's still young. We know what that left foot can do. So hopefully we see that more under Rob Edwards' side this coming season. Who have you gone for Borough's key man, Justin?
I've gone with Finazaz. 12 goals, 11 assists last season, 45 appearances. Very, very capable. I think he may be had a habit of dipping out of some of the big games with a lot on it, but I think he's still growing into that mould of, the spotlight's on him. He's the main man in that final third. I did fancy picking Riley McGree, mainly because I really like his influence on this Middlesbrough team when he's fit and firing, but injury record of past isn't great, and also that was in a Michael Carrick system, might be very different here under Rob Edwards. So Finazaz, I'm throwing him in there. Like I said, when you're needing a player who can spark something, just mentioning Morgan Whittaker, that inability to make good decisions in tight spaces, Finazaz can do it. He can do it. We've seen it. We saw it last season. And we know what he can deliver in terms of numbers, not only in what he actually delivered, both goals and assists, but also the chances he creates that aren't put away in a Middlesbrough team who, over the past few years, have been criminal underperformers of putting chances away. Imagine if they were scoring goals. How much more significant would have Finazaz have posted numbers-wise? It would have been ridiculous. So if the tides have turned and Middlesbrough start to put chances away, Finazaz's numbers could go up.
Yeah, well, he got a fair few last season, didn't he? And it did tend at some points last season to feel like when Finazaz doesn't play well, Middlesbrough don't play well. So that's essentially why he's going to be key this coming season, Justin. So yeah, it's a pretty safe pick on your behalf, isn't it? Let's go to Millwall as the next club who are picking a key man for. I've gone with Mihailo Ivanovic. I'm very excited to see what Mihailo Ivanovic can do next season. I would even go as far to say I think he could be one of the standout players in the entire division, because he was signed by Millwall for $2.5 million last summer. It took him a fair while to adapt to the Championship, but then suddenly everything clicked for him. And he was tremendous. Scored 10 goals in the final 19 league games. The partnership he struck up with Josh Coburn in particular really started to bear fruit, particularly in the final few games of the season. And so If that's a sign of things to come, he could be deadly, especially now Coburn's obviously joined on a permanent. He's an excellent finisher, still only 20. He's got an enormous amount of promise, and he has been linked with a move to the Premier League, which I think is a massive compliment, but Millwall don't want him to go. Simple as that. And so assuming he stays, he's without a doubt going to be a big player for the Lions. Do you like Ivanovic, Justin?
I really like him. I'm really excited by him. He's clinical, he's instinctive. And I think in the first third of last season, we saw someone who looked a little bit lost at times, but he really grew into the campaign. And I think he really took his game into a different stratosphere once Alex Neil took charge and got his blueprint onto the team as well. Like I said, that instinctiveness to not only get into good positions, but he's finishing. He's just a delightfully composed player when he's in the right headspace. And I think at 20 years old, there's a lot of room to grow. And I think that partnership you mentioned with Josh Coburn, to spend £5 million on a striker who's probably going to get the best out of his strike partner, I think might be some really, really shrewd business from Millwall.
Yeah, those two, their link-up play could be huge for the Lions, because I have heard increasing murmurs of people thinking they I don't really know if Millwall can be counted as a dark horse, considering they only just finished outside the playoffs last season, but being a genuine playoff side this coming season, and he is absolutely going to be massive to that. Who do you think is going to be massive for Millwall this season, Justin?
I've gone with Casper De Norre. I think if there's a player that sums up new age Millwall, it's De Norre. Destructive, high energy ball player, but he can play. If I was looking for a player who can do it all in midfield, I would be looking at Casper De Norre, especially for a championship club with a decent budget. But that's just to exemplify how much I like him as opposed to generate interest in him. I think he's going to suit what Millwall wanting to do next season under Alex Neil, in that they're not going to be this direct side we've come to know over recent years, especially under Gary Rowett and Neil Harris. Alex Neil, as we saw last season, did mix things up, and Casper De Norre, whilst can improve with playing the ball on the deck, I think his ability to switch play, win the ball back and switch play and get Millwall on the front foot again, I think is going to be really, really important, especially if Millwall are going to be charging up and pushing for a top six place.
Yeah, he's one of the best midfielders at what he does in the Championship, isn't he? He's done that. He showed that on plenty of times last season, and on plenty of occasions he's been kind of the focal point for Millwall in that midfield. So yeah, I'm a big Casper De Norre fan, and he's obviously going to be huge for them going forwards. We'll do one more team, Justin. It's Norwich City, the Canaries. Who have you got as their key player this coming season?
I've gone with Marcelino Núñez. We talk a lot about Josh Sargent being absent and that impacting Norwich last season, but Marcelino Núñez missed a fair chunk of the season as well. There's a player there, when you're missing a player of his quality, who only made 32 appearances last season, it's going to impact how you set up your midfield. And, at 25 years old, he's still got room to grow. And I think if you're going to compare him to anyone in that midfield in recent years at Norwich, it's Gab Sara. But there's an all-roundness to Núñez's game. He's highly creative, but he can do the spectacular. He's just a habit of scoring one of the best goals you've ever seen at Championship level. He's that sort of player. And amongst all the uncertainty of Norwich's recruitment strategy, Núñez is a player we know can deliver. Just needs to stay fit.
Yeah, in the final third, he's one of the best midfielders in the division. I love watching Marcelino Núñez play. And I think you're absolutely right, Justin, to highlight, how, considering we know about the star power that Sargent and Saïns provided last season, we talked about that a hell of a lot, didn't we? I think Núñez is definitely the next in line out of those players. I don't know about the new signings that Norwich have made so far and how they'll take to the Championship, but Núñez, based off what we've seen of him so far, he can definitely provide that. And yeah, you talk about some of the worldies he's scored. Remember that goal against Birmingham? Oh my Lord.
I did bear in mind, dare I say, did I rate that as one of the best goals I've ever seen?
You probably did. And yeah. I don't think it's that outrageous a shout, actually, because to hit a volley like that is sensational. My key player for Norwich City this coming season is Ante Cernak. Now, it suddenly dawned on me the other day that Norwich will be heading into this season with a front line which cost in the region of £22 million. You've got new signing Matthias Kvistergarden, who cost £7 million. You've got Matej Jurasek, who cost £6 million last January, but was barely played. However, the most expensive of the lot is Ante Cernak, who cost 9 million last summer, and we're yet to really see a decent return on that. 7 goals, 4 assists, not a terrible tally. But when you've cost 9 million, the expectation is a lot higher. And in the second half of last season, he spent a lot of time on the bench. So he's got a long way to go before he pays back the money spent on him. But look, he's had a year to bed himself in now. He's got a new manager. It's a fresh start for him. And if everything clicks, he could be frightening. If it doesn't, then we may be opening up the conversation involving the word flop. So a huge season for him where he has to deliver, I think, Justin.
Yeah, he does. He does. And it's a lot of pressure to put on a 21-year-old. But in the context of Boye Signs leaving and Josh Sargent probably on his way as well, there's a lot of firepower leaving that squad, leaving that front line. Players are going to have to step up. And unfortunately, Ante Cernak's one of those players that's got to step up. And rightly so with the fee that Norwich have paid. That's not Cernak's fault by any means. It's the recruitment under Ben Napper and the financial decision-making that goes on at the club. Nothing to do with the players. But unfortunately, me, we will put that pressure on those individuals. So he's a player that can't afford to not step up. He's got to do it, which is, like I say, it's pressure. It's a lot of pressure, but Norwich can't afford him not to step up either. There's a lot of variables going on here for Norwich being a success next season. I do feel for Liam Manning a bit, but I feel for the players that have been recruited with that pressure that's going to be on them.
Yeah, well, you can't just drop 9 million on someone and keep saying to him, no, it's all right, mate. There's always next season, especially when it's a club like Norwich, you don't have parachute payments now. You need to be seeing results for that amount of money, don't you? And as I say, a £22 million front line. Yeah, we need to see some results, don't we, Ben Napper? Otherwise, your record as a sporting director is going to be questioned even more. It looks like you want to say something, Justin.
I was just going to say that well of players that they've been selling is starting to dry up a little bit. They need new players to step in and create assets of themselves, not asses. Sorry.
Jesus Christ.
So these players do have to step up for a number of reasons, not only to deliver success on the pitch, but also so they can become sellable in 2 or 3 years' time, because that's clearly the model that Norwich is starting to adopt now.
Yeah, absolutely. But there we go, ladies and gents. This has been us picking a key player for every team in the Championship, part 1. We'll have part 2 coming on Sunday, where we'll be going through Oxford all the way to Wrexham. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. Just a quick one before we disappear. If you wouldn't mind giving us a like and a rating on whichever platform you are viewing or listening to us on, it helps us to grow as a podcast. And really appreciate you taking just a few seconds of your time to do that. But otherwise, that's just about it for us here on the Second Tier Podcast. We'll be back again on Sunday. And I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.